that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and the famous Tom Fennell, world traveler, philanthropist, and philosopher.
And non-cricket eater.
We were talking about eating crickets before the show. Okay, this show it just covers 4 days because of scheduling.
But it covers them in depth.
It covers them in depth. We have a kind of a central issue for this show, I think, which is China and Donald Trump.
That's pretty central right now.
It's pretty central, and I'm going to maintain that Donald Trump is giving away, or the American voters have given away leadership of the world to China by electing Donald Trump. Anyway, we'll get into that.
We'll get into that, but a very strong case can be made for exactly that.
Yeah. Okay, let's start. We start up with a photograph, which I think is unbelievable.
This is a nice.
It's a pretty photograph, but it's unbelievable. I was thinking as I was doing this last
night, there's some great photographs of wind turbines and sunsets out there on the web.
This is from Ars Technica, and that particular photograph is, according to the source, said to come from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and I think it's fake.
Think it's fake, huh?
Yeah. If you look at those 3 turbines,
yeah,
all 3 of them, the base is past the horizon. Not possible.
Okay.
It's just not. I think that's photoshopped. Okay.
It could very well be. It could very well be.
This comes from Ars Technica. You got a title on it, Tom?
Yeah, this is Massive Report details the energy economy that limits warming to 2 degrees C. And as a subset of that, the International Energy Agency takes a look at what to expect out to 2040.
Yep. The International Energy Agency released its annual report, which takes into account economic, technological, and policy developments, and it tries to project the trends that will drive our energy for the next few decades. This year's IEA report suggests that a combination of economics and policy will drive an explosion in renewables, contrary to what the Republicans and Donald Trump say.
Well, they make a good case. This is, by the way, a very in-depth article.
Yeah.
I recommend our viewers click on this and watch
I didn't do the regular introduction today.
Well, it's not too late.
Okay, well, no, this is information that all of these items come from my blog, geoharvey.com. And if you want to go to this article, click on the date. And the date for this article is Thursday, November 17th. The blog, geoharvey.com, has a calendar in the upper left area of the screen, and you just click on November 17th. There will be 10 to 15 articles there, and you can find this among them. And this would be in the international section, I believe. But you can read it there.
Well, as I was saying, this is a real in-depth article.
Yeah.
A lot of meat in it, and if you're inclined, and you got about 2 weeks, read the article.
It doesn't take
it's good.
2 weeks.
I'll give you a couple of quick takeaways, though.
Okay.
Renewables will be the largest power source built between now and 2040.
They already are.
That's no surprise.
No, that's not a surprise.
Now, the big picture, I got about 6 items here. I'll try to go through them quickly. Carbon emissions have stayed flat for several years running, even as the global economy grew.
Yes.
So that's very interesting. You'd expect them both to be climbing.
Right.
Coal use drops and shifts dramatically.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about
dramatically.
that on the program. Oil. It will take decades for EVs to replace electric vehicles, to displace a large number of internal combustion vehicles. As of now, there's no good substitute for oil.
That's what they're saying.
Well, it's just going to take time.
I don't think it'll take anywhere near the amount of time they say. But
well, you may very well be right. Natural gas. It shows growth under almost all scenarios. Nuclear. Decreased use in Europe, stasis in the U.S., rapid growth in China, virtually none in developing countries.
Yes. Too expensive.
Renewables. The cost is expected, this is very interesting, expected to drop by anywhere from 40 to 70% over this period.
My gosh, 40, wind power is already about half the price, power purchase agreements coming from wind power are
Absolutely,
already about
yeah.
half the price of the power purchase agreements coming from natural gas, which is the cheapest fossil fuel. And you can get better reliability out of wind power plus solar plus virtual power plants and so forth than you can
With
get
storage.
Even without storage.
Even without storage, yeah, because we've seen virtual power companies.
Virtual power plants, and I think these things are, I think they're wrong, but
And there's a final article here which
Okay.
we don't talk about much, water.
yeah,
And it says you can no longer talk about energy without considering water.
absolutely. There was a 2.4 gigawatt coal burning plant in India that shut down for a period of weeks
Because they didn't have any water.
Because they didn't have any
They
water.
couldn't cool it.
They
Yeah.
couldn't cool the plant. Okay, we're up to etenergyworld.com. We have another picture here.
Another
Not a
shot
pretty
coming up
picture.
there. Yeah.
But this is the one that you thought there were
Well,
better pictures.
it's okay, a picture. It's just there was a prettier one in the article.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you have for a title?
Wind farm in Chile. Now,
Wind farm in Chile.
Global green energy growth seen weathering Donald Trump storm.
Yep. The energy world will keep growing for the next few years as costs drop and coal use continues to fall, despite President-elect Donald Trump's pledge, I almost said chump, pledge to revive fuel, according to the fossil fuel, according to investors and analysts. They said possible policy changes under Trump should not dampen current investment in clean energy. And you know what? It's not going to encourage investment in coal either.
Not at all.
Not in the slightest.
But this is interesting. Last year, global renewables investment reached an all-time high. Well, that's not surprising.
No, it's not. And practically nothing in coal. I mean, we had, I think it was last year, I'm doing this, saying this from a vague recollection, but my recollection is that last year we had 3 megawatts of coal production go online in the United States.
How much?
3 megawatts.
That's nothing.
It's basically, it's not enough to power the town of Brattleboro.
No.
I mean, it's a big local generator, but it's almost nothing. And that's in the entire country.
Wow.
Coal is just not being,
Well,
and this business of carbon sequestration, forget it.
forget it, huh?
It's I don't know, maybe they're going to come up with some way to do it.
Some kind of a break.
Yeah, but everything I've seen is fantastic. And by that I mean these guys, anybody, it's a fantasy approach. But there you go.
Well, we'll see, because there's people working on that too.
There are, but there's stuff that they're coming up with, putting in plastic bags at the bottom of the ocean. I'm sorry, I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't think so either. I think it's going to have to be using something like shellfish to create carbon.
Well, you can do that. You can do it,
Yeah.
but it's going to be extremely expensive to sequester
Well,
that
yeah,
carbon.
they've got to get it down to a practical.
Yeah. And maybe the best way to do it would be to raise lots of shellfish, and then you'd have, oysters to
food,
eat.
too.
Yeah. Should we move on?
Why not?
We are still on 17th of November, and we have a report from Science World Report.
Well, we're going to hear this same refrain several
Absolutely,
times
we
in this
will.
show.
Yep.
Climate change, not a hoax. China tells Trump.
Climate change. There is a climate change hoax. There really is. There is a climate change hoax. And the hoax is that climate change isn't happening. And guess what, gang? The reason why that hoax exists is because there are politicians who are paid to tell you that by a couple of guys who are in their mid-70s and are going to lose their bottom line if people start believing that climate change is dangerous. All right, let's get back to it. Climate change, China has responded to Trump's claim that climate change was a Chinese hoax. Quote, if you look at the history of climate change negotiations, actually it was initiated by the IPCC with the support of, guess who? The Republicans during the Reagan administration and the senior Bush administration in the late 1980s, end quote.
So that kind of turns this upside down, doesn't it?
It sure does. The vice foreign minister pointed out, socialist hoax? Are you kidding me? So I looked it up. You know, I wanted to get an independent analysis of this, and I looked it up. Yeah, it was the Reagan administration that really kind of started putting the clamp down on this. But that was long after the first report went to President Johnson that climate change was happening. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the idea that the socialists would benefit from people believing that they should put photovoltaic panels on their rooftops and get their own solar power is...
A very socialist thing.
This is just unbelievable. And on top of everything else, you've got people who say, you believe in climate change? Well, you're the biggest fool in North America. Yeah,
Conspiracy theory.
Man. Yeah, fools. Yeah, there are fools out there.
Yeah.
Yep. And the fools are about to learn that they have had the wool pulled over their eyes. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Just Means brought us this next item.
General Motors makes its largest green energy purchase to date.
Wow.
They've
been buying a lot. This is General Motors, gang. General Motors made its largest procurement to date of renewable energy, purchasing enough wind power to provide for its electricity needs at 16 of its U.S. facilities, including a major assembly and stamping complex in Arlington, Texas, offices in Fort Worth and Austin, and 13 parts warehouses east of the Mississippi River. They are moving. They put solar panels on a factory roof in Detroit earlier this year. And
they're looking at the bottom line.
They're looking at the bottom line. Yeah. And
as we have discussed, you know, green stuff all aside, it's going to be economics.
It's economics. And, you know, people have been talking about, well, when wind and solar become reach grid parity, I've got news for you. Wind power is at grid parity. Solar power is at grid parity.
What is all those subsidies?
Well, it's not the subsidies. Fossil fuels get 5 times the subsidies.
Well, we know that, but the people don't.
People don't. No, they don't.
Those subsidies have been going on for 100 years.
That's right. And another thing that you should remember, by the way, is that if you're going to put solar power on your rooftop and try to figure out what amount of money you're going to save or lose doing that, if you want to compare the cost of solar power with the cost of grid power, remember that what you're paying for solar power is buying panels, and they're going to be paid off in a few years.
Yeah.
After that, your power is basically free.
No more fuel.
Yeah, and then that compares with retail price. So when you're talking about grid parity, utility scale solar reaches grid parity with grid power long after home solar does, even though the parity reports on home solar are say something else, because those reports compare wholesale with wholesale, and that's not what happens when you put solar power on your own roof. But solar power is now marginally cheaper than power from natural gas, which is the cheapest fossil fuel we've got.
Okay.
This is, you know,
I'm not going to argue with you there.
Anybody who wants to know, look up the Lazard LCOE, Levelized Cost of Electricity Report, version 9.0. Okay, our next item comes from the BBC. Let's put that picture up and show everybody camels and oil wells. Okay.
That's interesting, because in Saudi Arabia, they got a lot of camels and a lot of oil wells, but they don't use that kind of pump.
That pump is called a nodding donkey.
Is it?
Yeah.
I've seen them in Ohio, but I've didn't see them in Saudi
My
Arabia.
bet is that picture was taken in Texas.
Well, I'm sure they got
they got a few camels in Texas. Yeah, okay. Anyway, this is from Just Means.
Oil industry faces boom and bust, warns the IEA Energy Group.
This is from BBC.
This is actually a serious article.
Yeah, it is. The International Energy Agency, which represents 29 energy-producing countries, says unless more money is spent exploring for and developing new oil fields, demand may outstrip supply early in the next decade. This is really soon. And that could see oil prices surging again really soon. Investment in new oil supplies last year was at the lowest level since the 1950s.
Yeah. Well, this is talking about a boom or bust cycle. It's going to be up and down. And just one quick sentence from this article. If new projects remain low, investment in new projects remain low, then it becomes increasingly unlikely that demand and supply can be matched.
Yeah.
Without the start of a new boom and bust cycle for the industry.
Yeah. And
they're up against a brick in a hard place.
well, they've got they are. The price of oil is high, even at a low price. We had an article last week in which the Emirates 24/7 reported that at the current price of solar power in Dubai, oil to compete against it would have to sell for $5 a barrel. You remember that one?
I do remember that one.
And now we've got
a long time since oil was $5 a barrel.
And what we're seeing here is the current price of oil, which is $50 a barrel, is expected to go up. This doesn't look like a good time to buy an SUV.
I don't think so.
Man.
No, I won't even comment about that.
Well, you know, Tom, I'm going to tell you that you spend too much money for fuel for your car. What do you spend for fuel for your car?
Well, during the summer months, nothing.
Yeah, right. Tom makes his own fuel. Everybody can make his own fuel.
Well, it helps if you got a diesel.
Yeah, it helps if you've got a diesel, but you know, you never can tell what's going to happen. I think people are going to start making gasoline out of the carbon dioxide in the waters of Lake Champlain.
Well, there are companies doing it already.
Yes, there are. Okay.
And we've talked about it.
We have. We are up to an article from Clean Technica about the Sunshot Initiative. Are we not?
Did we talk about the camels?
Oh, didn't we talk about the camels? Oh, let's talk about the camels. Oh, we did talk about the camels.
So now we're on CNN.
Now we're on CNN. You're right. I saw this thing about oil fields, and I said we've dealt with that. Okay, our next item is at CNN, and this is
Mammoth, Texas oil discovery, biggest ever in the USA. This is news.
This is news, except for one thing. I don't believe that oil is going to come out of the ground in any quantity.
Well, it may not. Well, I'll let you read it and we'll talk about it quickly.
Geologists say a new survey shows an oil field in West Texas dwarfs others found so far in the United States, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. The Midland Basin of the Wolfcamp Shale area in the Permian Basin in West Texas is now estimated to have 20 billion barrels of oil and 1.6 billion barrels of natural gas.
Well, here's the takeaway. They've known about this oil for a long time.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, they've been drilling there for a long time.
Right.
And they've been sucking the oil out of the
Depths.
just regular boreholes.
Yep.
Now they've found out, well, what's going to happen if we frack? And they say, holy cow, there's a lot
of oil down there.
Huh?
A lot of oil.
A lot of oil.
And
yeah, oil's been produced at the Wolfcamp area since the 1980s.
Yep.
And new estimates of the oil field project now projected to be the largest in U.S. history. Makes it 3 times bigger than the Bakken in North Dakota. Okay.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, this just means that the list of assets that will get stranded is longer.
It could very well happen that way.
I would never invest in this. I would never invest in this, and I'm sure that there are people who are just drooling to get involved in this thing. But it's you know, the World Bank, Citigroup, various organizations have talked about the costs of stranded assets. 20 billion barrels of oil at at $50 a barrel, which is the current price, is $1 trillion, isn't it? Am I wrong?
I wasn't following the numbers.
50 billion barrels at I'm sorry, 20 billion barrels at $50 a barrel is $1 trillion.
It's a trillion, isn't it?
That just means that there's $1 trillion worth of assets. Somebody's claiming these assets on their books. You know
Yeah.
that's happening, and if they don't get used, then somebody has lost $1 trillion. But you know what? They're not going to get used. These big banking and financial organizations are saying there's $100 trillion in stranded assets that they already knew about that were going to be lost because we can't get that oil out of the ground and put the carbon into the air because it isn't safe. So
That's not going to be the determining factor. It's not going to be cheap enough.
it's not going to be cheap enough. That's right. With the price of even at an increased price, it's not. As the price goes up, it's not going to be cheap enough. As the price goes down, it's going to cost too much to extract it.
The next article talks about almost exactly that.
Yeah.
Let's get this picture up. We got
Oh, okay.
a nice picture of a.
Pump jack at dawn. And I have to fix this. There we go. Is that the picture?
That's the picture.
Okay. Pump jack at dawn. That's the picture that goes with the article that we were just talking about in Texas. Our next article comes from Clean Technica.
U.S. DOE, Department of Energy, aims to cut costs of solar to just 2 cents per kilowatt hour.
Right.
They're almost there now.
They're almost there. DOE's Sunshot Initiative was launched in 2011, quote, with the goal of making solar electricity cost competitive with traditional energy sources without subsidies by 2020, end quote. In just 5 years, the initiative has achieved more than 90% of its goal to cut the cost of utility-scale solar electricity in the United States down to 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, 2 cents, we're working on 2 cents. We really are.
Well, we've seen 2.9.
We've seen 2.91, yeah, in Chile,
yeah.
and 2.99 in Dubai.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're getting there. And with solar power becoming so cheap, and you know that EVs are a very interesting thing. You can fuel them when the sun shines or when the wind blows.
Mm-hmm.
So
cost you nothing.
it doesn't cost you anything. So if you've got solar on your roof, you can charge your car, and it doesn't cost you anything if the sun shines.
Well, I've already seen there's a carport with solar panels on the roof.
Yes, indeed.
It's a charging port and a carport, and it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's a clever use of space.
That's right.
It protects the car from the sun.
Right.
Well,
Oh.
there's a quick takeaway here.
Okay.
Sunshot, of course, is the DOE's, what would you call it?
Initiative. It's a
Initiative.
program, yeah.
And it asked the question, will Sunshot be safe under a Donald Trump administration? There's been some speculation about this since last week's election result. But there is a level of confidence that the property tycoon's capitalist leanings and Make America Great mantra will see Sunshot for what it is, a success story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's an interesting twist.
Yes, it is an interesting twist.
Well, let's get us up here again.
Okie doke. Our next item comes from Alt Energy Mag.
Energy storage set to transform U.S. power grid. This again, if
It
you've been
just
paying
goes
attention
on and
here,
on and on.
We've been talking about
Yeah.
this.
The nation's energy infrastructure will undergo a significant transformation over the next 10 years, according to a study by Mortenson, a recognized leader in energy and transmission infrastructure. This is due largely to declining costs for energy storage. Of professionals answering a survey, 96% believe the technology is a major key. That's almost as many as the percentage of scientists who believe that climate change is caused by human beings.
Well, that's 97 the last I heard.
Well, actually, it depends upon the survey, and
Yeah.
that one survey from MSNBC said that out of 70,000, almost 70,000 scientists that they surveyed who were publishing in peer-reviewed journals on climatology and meteorology, only 4 of 70,000 scientists were willing to say there is no human-caused climate change.
Interesting.
Okay,
A quick takeaway on this one. Energy storage, which is what the article's about, and
Yep.
battery energy storage in particular, is seen as a technology that will flourish and help transform how electrical power is generated, distributed, and consumed in the U.S. Global utility-scale, grid-connected battery storage is forecast to grow to 12 gigawatts by 2024. That's a lot.
12 gigawatts you could think of that as being the equivalent of 12 nuclear power plants.
Big nuclear power plant.
Yeah.
Bigger than the Yankee.
Well, but I don't think storage is going to be that small. That growth is going to be that slow. If you think about it, 12 gigawatts. Okay, the Northfield Mountain pumped storage facility is 1.08 gigawatts.
Yep.
So that's 12 of that one storage facility, except that this is in batteries rather than pumped storage.
We've seen some innovative things like running trains uphill. And,
Absolutely.
And of course there's pumped storage, which has been around for a long time, but it works.
Yep.
And then there's battery technology.
Yep. And now,
as I've said here, there's been more progress in battery technology in the last 10 years than it was in the previous 100.
right. And you know, if you think about it, you can use fuel cells to generate electric power out of oxygen and hydrogen,
Yeah.
with water being the result. A slightly different design in the fuel cell, you can take electricity and water and produce hydrogen and oxygen.
You're just doing it backwards.
You're just doing it backwards.
That's called electrolysis.
So even you can have two fuel cells, or maybe you could even design one that it would do it either direction, and have a small supply of water that powers this thing forever. You know, it's all you got to do is put energy in, take energy out. That's energy storage. It's power storage, electric power storage.
Well, storage will be much more important in the near future than it has been in the past.
Yes, I agree with that. Okay, we are up to an item from an organization called Opposing Views.
Nice pitch out here.
Yeah.
Okay, businesses urge Trump not to leave the Paris climate deal.
A group of 365 companies, including General Mills, Nike, Starbucks, has urged President-elect Donald Trump to abide by the Paris climate deal. In addition to sticking with the Paris deal, the group urged the U.S. government to have a, quote, continuation of low-carbon policies, end quote, and to invest, quote, in low-carbon economy, end quote. Now, I want to point out, these are businesses. Donald Trump is pro-business, and these are big businesses, and what he's facing, and I think that it's something that he never expected to face, is that there are big businesses that want him in that deal. And there are also big businesses that want him out of that deal. And he's going to discover that the big businesses that want him out of the deal are businesses like Koch Industries and ExxonMobil, and the big businesses that want him in the deal are everybody outside of the fossil fuel industry and the few utilities that are electing to stick with fossil fuels. And when you compare one with the other, okay, you've got the fossil fuel industry and, on the other hand, everybody else.
That's a good way of looking at it.
And Donald Trump is a guy whose background is in real estate, and the people who are most adamant about staying in the climate agreement are people in real estate and real estate related banking and insurance. So do you think he's going to listen to them?
I think he's going to listen to the real estate people.
I think he will. I have a feeling that his cabinet, as it's initially announced right now to be, is not going to be the cabinet that we see a year from now. It's not even going to be close.
I wouldn't bet against that. I really wouldn't against it. So there's a quick takeaway here.
Yeah.
This comes right from the report. Failure to build a low-carbon economy puts American prosperity at risk.
Yeah. Oh,
But
boy.
the right action now will create jobs and boost U.S. competitiveness. And the group wrote, "We pledge to do our part in our own operations and beyond."
Yes, and they are doing it.
And
You're
they're
seeing
doing
it.
their part.
And some of these are organizations that I have no sympathy with in terms of the way they do business, like Amazon. Or, like the one they used to call the evil empire, which was Microsoft.
Yeah.
You know, Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, this is bringing it closer to home.
Closer to home, vtdigger.org.
Feds sue proposed Vermont Yankee disposal company.
Now this is an interesting twist
Yeah.
on this thing. The U.S. Federal Justice Department filed a lawsuit to block a merger involving one of the key players in the proposed sale of Vermont Yankee. Federal officials say Energy Solutions' acquisition of Waste Control Specialists, which has agreed to buy the nuclear plant, the Vermont Yankee nuclear plant, would create.
We talked about last week.
Yeah, would create a near monopoly in low-level radiation waste disposal. I want to say I don't think this will have any effect whatever on the question of whether or not that sale of that plant goes forward.
It probably won't. I was trying to read into this what was really going on.
Yeah.
And man, it's convoluted.
It's
One company owns another company, which is selling out to this third company.
Crazy.
I don't expect that this particular suit is going to go very far.
Well, I don't know if the suit is going to go very far, but I don't think it'll have any effect on the sale of Vermont Yankee or on the new proposals on decommissioning, which are much faster
Right from the article is a paraphrase of exactly what you said. It's not clear what impact, if any, the federal government's dispute with WCS might have on the deal.
Yeah. It's not clear.
I don't think it's going to do
I don't think it's going to do much.
I think
Okay.
for one thing, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, it does. Okay, we are up to Saturday, November 19th.
China, let's get the picture up here.
Yeah, let's get the picture up.
Chinese sailors.
Chinese sailors. This is disturbing, but I want to point out that picture was not taken recently. That picture was taken in 2000, and it was taken in Yokosuka, Japan. Okay, so
China takes the climate spotlight as U.S. heads for exit.
the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States has the world holding out for a climate hero. And parties at Marrakesh are determined that that will be China. China is backing away from neither the challenge nor the Paris Agreement, as Trump has vowed to do. This article comes from Scientific American.
Yes, it does. And
this is disturbing. It means, in effect, that the United States, under the guise of making America great again, is handing over a large chunk of the job of world leadership to China. China is leading in science because the United States is denying science. China is leading in energy. You want to pull me up.
See your face.
You're going to pull me up by my bootstraps. China is leading in renewable energy. There's no question about it. China is spending twice as much money every year on renewable energy as the United States does. And China is now running an economy which is a challenger to the United States and possibly bigger. It has more billionaires than the United States, I have read. And here we're saying that China is going to take over the leadership in guidance on climate change. And by the way, we are leaving that leadership role by saying we are not going to keep our promises.
Yeah.
So China is taking over moral leadership as well. Thank you very much, Republicans. Thank you very much, Donald Trump. Making America great again? Making America great what? A great butt of jokes?
Well, right from the article. One of the risks that I think, this is a quote, I don't remember who the quote is, but one of the risks that I think the Trump administration needs to consider is the risk that China will become a global leader in this new technology, which is market-driven, and the Americans will be left behind.
America is already being left behind, and it's being left behind for the benefit of two people who are in their mid-70s who want to make money in the next quarterly report. And by golly, they own the business, so it doesn't make any difference. Yeah. They've got, we're talking about people who have got billions of dollars. Why does anybody care? It's absolutely mind-blowing.
Some people want only one thing, the four-letter word, more.
Yeah, and you know what?
They don't care what more.
But what's happening here is we've got people who are donating money to a large group of organizations that have been promoting conservative policy for years and years and years, so the conservatives trust them. They have won that trust, and now they are betraying that trust.
I think that's a good way of looking at it.
And they are doing that under the guise of we need to protect democracy. We need to protect the free market. And what are they doing? They're handing over control, leadership of the world to China, which may be the biggest, most intensely capitalistic country in the world, but still claims to be communist.
This could be a very big mistake.
Huge mistake. This is a huge.
Look at that picture there.
Yeah, these.
You know guns pretty well. They look like old-fashioned guns for 2000.
They are, and of course, this is typical of navies around the world. You know, when my father was in the Navy, the most modern weapons they had on his ship in the Second World War were 1903 Springfields, because the Navy kept the Springfields through the Second World War.
Looks like
These
the Chinese equivalent of an M1.
Sort of. These rifles are Simonovs. They were designed in 1943 by a Russian named Simonov. They are also called SKSs. These are probably Model 56s, which were the ones that Mao Zedong said, we want to have a carbine available to every adult in China. And the Chinese actually did, as I recall, in the 1970s or 80s, announce that they had fulfilled that goal.
That sounds a little crazy.
Think about. Well, you see, here's the problem.
Chinese people
in their communes. Each commune was to have its own arsenal.
Yeah.
But the communes were under the control of the communists.
Okay, so they wouldn't revolt. So it was safe.
Exactly. It didn't actually work because, you know, they did have revolts from time to time, like the Culture Revolution, which did involve artillery, I have read. But nevertheless, every commune was supposed to have these rifles. And the reason why was because they wanted to make sure that if they were invaded by Russia, the individual people could stop the Russians on their own without having to be organized into armies.
Sort of like a disorganized militia.
Exactly. Everybody was in their reserves, and they were also worried about Vietnam attacking them and you know, so forth. Well, if you think about it, how many adults were there in China?
How many adults in China? How many billions?
They claimed that they had fulfilled the manufacture of enough carbines for every adult in China.
Wow.
And that was in the 1970s, and that means that there were roughly 650 million of those, put that back up, 650 million of those carbines were produced and put into Chinese arsenals. Now, if you go to Wikipedia, yeah, those are carbines. A carbine is just a small rifle.
Yeah,
if you go to Wiki,
full-size rifle.
it's a lot smaller than the M1 Garand. If you put them side by side, the Garand would be.
They got knives on the end of it. So.
Yeah, and the Garand would come out to be almost as long as that is with the bayonet. But these things were they weren't the greatest rifles in the world, but they worked. You know. They worked in combat. They were extremely reliable, and you know, what can you say about this? The 650 million of these things were. I think there were probably 800 million of these made altogether, and you could buy them. Well, you can buy AK-47s, which are machine guns using the same cartridge as this. These are just semi-automatic rifles with a 10-shot magazine. The AK-47 was a machine gun with a 30-round magazine. And you can buy AK-47s 20 years ago in sub-Saharan Africa for about $55 each.
Okay.
You know, I mean, this is the way guns are in the world. They're all over the place. You think that's bad. Think about Princess Diana, who was trying to work against landmines.
Yeah.
You can make landmines for $2.
Wow.
And what are they used for? They're used only for one purpose, and that is defense.
Okay.
So you're telling people they're not allowed to defend themselves for $2.
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
It ain't going to work.
So, you know, let's get real.
If you can make them for $2, you could probably make them in a home workshop.
Oh, you can make guns in home workshops. There's no question about that. You know, I mean, you could, the M3 grease gun that was used during the Second World War and the Korean War.
Yeah.
During the Korean War, those guns were manufactured for $7.
Wow. Wow.
It's crazy. And after the Gun Control Act of 1968, the mob in the New York City area decided that they needed to have guns, a supply of guns of their own. So they went into the business of manufacturing guns, and there were at least 3 models of guns that were manufactured in the New York City area by the mafia. I'll tell you another one. After Corazon Aquino took over the Philippines, her predecessor, Marcos, had banned handguns, and her reaction to that was that he was trying to put all the power into the Philippine government, and she wanted the power in the people. So she said, we're going to rescind that ban, and anybody who is currently manufacturing guns in the Philippines will be given an amnesty if they sign up for licensing to be manufacturers. They had over 300 different organizations apply for amnesty under that program that were making guns. Some of them were making guns in factories that had no electricity.
Wow. You mean like this, huh?
Yeah, that's right. You don't need high tech to make guns.
Yeah.
You just don't need it.
Well, I didn't get there. Well, I was in Saudi Arabia. A lot of the people went into the hills of Pakistan on.
Oh, yeah.
And there was guys there that make any gun in the world.
Any gun in the world. It was absolutely crazy. They were making rocket launchers.
Yeah.
They were making ammunition for rockets. You know, we should, yeah, by hand. We should get on. Yeah, they didn't have any grid power at that place. All right, Park Records. Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah, we got into a rant.
We got into a rant, and it just went on too long. Okay, our next is from, well, you know, this is the thing that I'm really upset about, is the fact that the United States is giving away its power because it's denying science for the benefit of a very small group of people. This isn't the 1% or the 10th of 1%. This is the millionth of 1%.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is an interesting article coming up.
Yes.
Environmentalists search for silver linings.
Yes, this is from the Park Record. On November 15th,
City,
yep.
Utah.
On November 15th, the temperature in central Salt Lake City reached 73 degrees. 73 degrees on the 15th of November in Utah. The hottest temperature ever recorded on that date or any date later in the year. Park City Mountain Resort had already postponed its opening date to the 26th of November. Climate change anywhere? But there is hope. There's hope.
Well, as I said, it's an interesting article. Click on it. It's not a long article, but it's very interesting.
Yep. Okay, our next one is from the BBC.
Got another picture.
We have a picture coming up. There it is. By golly.
That must be Alaska.
That's Alaska.
Obama bans new oil drilling in the Arctic Ocean.
For at least 5 years. The Obama administration has introduced a ban on offshore oil drilling in the Arctic for at least 5 years. The move is a significant victory for environmentalists who have campaigned for years against drilling in the ecologically fragile region. But Donald Trump, who pledged to increase offshore drilling, could overturn the ban. Do you think he will?
I would really be surprised if he did.
You think so? I think he will do this.
He's going to make noise about it.
I think he'll do this in the first week.
You think so?
Yeah, I think he will.
He said he was going to do it on the first day, didn't he?
I don't know, but you know, one of the things about Donald Trump is he can have a sentence that has 2 clauses in it, with the 2 clauses denying each other. This is a guy who, I mean, Hillary is a liar. I think a lot of people know that, but Donald Trump has taken things beyond what Hillary does, to the point where he doesn't even pretend to be telling the truth. I don't know what to say about this.
Well, a quick takeaway from here, this is a quote from the Secretary of Interior, Sally Jewell.
Yeah?
The plan focuses lease sales in the best places, those with the highest resource potential, lowest conflict, and established infrastructure, and removes regions that are simply not right to lease.
Yep.
So that makes sense.
It does.
And of course,
Okay.
industry representatives condemn the decision.
Of course they do. And our next item is from
This
CNN.
is a very good article coming up.
Yep.
This is extremely good.
Yep,
What's going on in the Arctic?
this is scary. For what appears to be the first time since scientists began keeping track, sea ice in the Arctic and the Antarctic are hitting their record lows in mid-November. Temperatures in the Arctic have soared recently, and scientists are struggling to explain the implications. Air temperatures have been 35 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius, above average. 35 degrees above average.
Above average in the Arctic.
Right.
Wow.
I want to point out, though, there has been a brutal cold spell in Siberia.
Well, that's part and parcel of all of this.
Yeah.
That's part and parcel. I recommend, if you got the time, look up that article.
Yeah, look up the article.
There's a beautiful Arctic time-lapse photograph
Oh.
of the
This
ice
is
disappearing.
it's stunning. It's
It is, it's
absolutely stunning. What usually happened in the past was that the lowest extent of ice in the Arctic would happen in September or early October. Now we're in the middle of November.
And it hasn't happened yet.
Whew. Okay.
Well, article asks us, why does it matter to us? And the answer answers what you just said. The Arctic region impacts the weather in the rest of the planet, in particular, North America, Europe, and Asia.
Yep.
Researchers are looking at one such theory which considers a warm Arctic and cold continents.
Yeah.
A warmer Arctic featuring
So
less
we could
sea
have
ice.
colder air here in Vermont
This is exactly what it's
because
saying.
of climate change
Yeah.
that makes the whole world
Yeah.
warmer.
A warmer Arctic featuring less sea ice that leads to more frequent spilling of cold air that's
Right.
normally trapped by the polar vortex.
Yep.
That would mean the continents, that's us, are hit with more frequent shots
Right.
of Arctic air.
We have to move on. We're getting
Okay.
shy on time. This next article comes from Huffington Post, Canada.
Tesla's solar roof will cost less than a normal roof.
This is, how are you going to be able to sell oil? Tesla officially became an energy company this week after a vote in favor of the automaker acquiring Solar City. But CEO Elon Musk had more to announce. Musk said that the brand's new solar roof product will somehow cost less than a traditional shingled roof. And that's even before factoring in the energy savings. So if you need a roof, you buy the roof cheaper from Tesla than you would have bought it from somebody else. Although I'll bet you it'll mean more money for the roofers, because it means they're going to have on their staff people who know how to
Somebody
connect
who's
these
wired,
things.
yep.
But it means that you put up a roof, it costs you less, and then you pay less for electricity.
Good takeaway. Would you like a roof that looks better than a normal roof,
Yep.
lasts twice as long,
Yep.
costs less,
Yep.
and by the way, generates electricity?
Well, there you
How
go.
can you say no?
Yeah.
The tiles will be indistinguishable from a normal roof.
Yep.
You can even walk on them.
Yep.
And they'll be able to melt snow with captured heat. And the expensive roofing materials that the solar tiles mimic, like slate, can cost as much as 20 times more than asphalt. So you're getting a better looking roof that generates. This is a win-win situation.
Win-win-win-win-win
Tesla's
situation.
got his hat on straight.
Yeah, I think so. We are up to Sunday, November 20th, and we got to speed through our next five. Yeah. Okay. This is a prescribed burn in northern California, and this is from the Arizona Daily Star.
Planned burns in Arizona and the West vital to restoring forests. Almost seems counterproductive.
It does, but then when you look into it, you find it's not. Western fires are getting bigger and hotter. When researchers from Penn State's Earth and Environmental Systems Institute studied the history of Western fires, they found that the changes in land management had trumped climate in much of the same 20th century, but stronger fire-climate relationships have developed since the mid-1980s. And,
What they're saying is get rid of the extra wood while you can.
Yeah, while it's
burning it.
Right.
While it's still wet.
While it's still on the ground.
Still on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And in small
not
piles.
dried out.
Yep.
And you're going to have fewer fires.
Yeah, the big fires can be held off, and the big fires, forest fires that we've had, particularly the ones in past decades in Yellowstone Park and places like that, happened because there was resistance to burning off the material that was on the ground, like this. Okay, our next item is from today.ng, which is obviously a Nigerian website.
Yep. Africa looks to solar for communities off the grid.
African consumers are opting for off-grid solar solutions. According to International Energy Agency projections, almost 1 billion people in sub-Saharan Africa will gain access to the grid by 2040. But by that time, 530 million will remain off-grid, almost comparable to the 600 million who cannot access power today. What this is saying is that a huge number of the people who don't have electricity are going to be getting it from off-grid solutions.
Off-grid. There isn't going to be a grid.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yep.
There's always the individual generation, and
right.
And the article goes into this in detail. You know, I mean,
Yep.
These things are getting real cheap. You know, the government is supporting them. And instead of burning kerosene, which is very expensive for them,
Yep.
they're getting light, they're getting cooking,
They're getting
a television set.
And they're getting much cleaner environment, and you don't have to put in transmission lines to build these
I mean,
things.
it sounds like a win-win situation.
Yep. Okay, our next item is from Perf Science.
USA could be punished if it pulls out of the Paris Agreement.
You know, I mean, this Donald Trump, yeah, make America great again. Okay, after discussing details during the past week on how to meet the Paris Agreement's goals successfully, some diplomats have suggested that the United States should be punished with measures like carbon pollution tax on imports of American-made goods if it withdraws from the agreement, as President-elect Donald Trump has promised. You know, if he builds the wall,
Yeah.
you know what that wall's going to do? It's going to keep people in this country who want to escape to Mexico and take advantage of the prosperity there. Really, I mean, this is the insanity that is moving into Washington. They're going to drain the swamp and put the contents in the White House. You
I
know,
saw an interesting picture. It's about a 20-foot high fence. I don't know exactly where it was, but it could have been right down there. But there was a ramp. It looked like a portable ramp right up to the top, and it was a car going right over the top of it. He's just driving it right over the wall.
Insanity. This is insanity for a small group of people. 1/1,000,000th of 1% of the country is going to benefit from you know, and conservative Republicans supported this guy in some cases. People who would say they're for fiscal conservatism. They are supporting a guy who says, I love debt, I'm the king of debt, you don't have to worry about default, you print your own money. What are you talking about? Okay, our next item is from the Billings Gazette.
I just wanted to say something real quick about this.
Yeah.
The companies that are talking about punishing the United States, this is not coming from Lower Slovenia. This is Canada and Mexico.
Yes. Yeah.
And others, of course, too.
Well, and the Mexicans are not exactly happy with the American electorate right now, so you know, you can't expect them to be spending their time trying to figure out ways to be merciful and kind. Okay. Billings Gazette.
Texas can push for more renewables, but challenges abound for other regions.
In a recent study out of Texas, researchers predicted that the state would reduce its coal-generated electricity to 6%. That is
Texas.
6, a single numeral 6.
Wow.
In under 20 years. If the study's proposals are even partly accurate, they would represent a turning of the tide in electricity generation, one that is not welcome in places like Wyoming, where coal is produced. This obviously.
This is interesting here. Texas is probably the only place in America where they produce some electricity from oil.
Yeah, well.
Because they got a lot of oil.
Yeah, they do it in Alaska too.
They do it in
And
Alaska.
they have been doing it in Hawaii, which is why Hawaii is moving away from oil.
That's imported oil.
That's imported
Yeah,
oil.
That's horrible.
And in Alaska, they're stuck with oil because they didn't have a grid. So they had to use diesel locally in a lot of those little villages. And that's all getting turned into, we're going to wind power. For crying out loud, they're going to solar power in Alaska in some places. Think about that.
It's impossible. They don't get enough sun.
Oh, man. Okay.
Well, the U.S., according to this article, still gets the majority of electricity from coal.
Yeah.
And most of that coal comes from Wyoming.
Well, the article's wrong. The United States does not get most of its electricity from coal.
I'll take your word for it.
It doesn't. And the percentage is dropping like a rock.
Well, I know the percentage is dropping. I don't know enough about the statistics.
It was when last time I looked, it was down to about 23%. And it looked to me like the percentage that we're getting out of renewables will probably increase past coal, starting very quickly, starting in March of next year. I'm going to project.
That's pretty quick.
It's pretty quick.
But I wouldn't argue with you there because I'm looking at the same crystal ball.
Yeah. Okay. So should we go on?
Yes, we shall.
And we are up to an article.
This is the last article, isn't it?
This is the last article, and it's. Oh, come on, silly machine.
Got a picture here.
We do, but I have to get to it. Wait a minute. I don't have the picture.
You don't have the picture?
I don't have the picture, sorry to say. But this is from the Christian Science Monitor.
What Trump really means for global climate change progress.
Maybe it just won't get that bad. Yeah, the United States President-elect Donald Trump is threatening to pull the world's second largest emitter out of the major international deal to ratchet down greenhouse gases. But no, it will not scuttle progress.
Well, this is a very comprehensive article. It's a very long article.
Yep.
We got a couple of weeks. Pull it up and read it.
Yeah.
The picture that we don't see, I'll just describe it quickly. It's a whole bunch of people that have a couple of very, very large signs that say, "We will move ahead."
Yeah. And guess who's going to be leading them?
It ain't going to be us.
It's going to be China. The Chinese have said, we will assume the leadership role of the world. That's what they said.
It's going to happen by default.
It's going to happen because we are refusing that leadership role. So we're going to make America great again by pulling America back from being a world leader. It doesn't make sense.
Not to me.
Not to me either.
Under Trump, just from the article, the U.S. role is all but certain to shrink.
Yep.
One risk has to do with America's own emissions, and a wider fear is that a U.S. pullback could also pull other countries out of the deal. I don't think that's going to happen. But leaders here sounded notes of hope about keeping Trump engaged.
Well,
we've talked about why he might.
There have been politicians in other countries that have said, maybe we should get out of this deal.
But I don't think they will.
I don't think they will. For example, there was an Indian politician who I read about who was saying, if America isn't going to do this, why should India? But India has got such big problems from pollution that it doesn't make sense for India not to be involved in the deal. And the Chinese aren't going to pull out of the deal because they're laughing all the way to the bank, as it were. Yeah. They're all of a sudden put into a position where not only are they economically the world leaders in terms of renewable energy, which they are because they're spending twice as much money on renewable energy as the United States already, and as much more money than the rest of the world is on wind power. So they've got a leadership role already, but they can now say we are morally superior to the United States. We are scientifically superior.
They are aware that there's a large percentage of their population does not have energy.
India or China?
Well, both of them.
No.
Well, China is changing, but India is changing too.
India is behind China.
And it's going to be decentralized.
We saw the last village in India to get its electricity about 8 months ago. So the areas of China, did I say India? I meant China.
You meant China, yeah.
Okay. In China, the only areas that don't have electricity are areas that are really out in the boondocks where we're talking about a couple of houses stuck together. Yeah, there are a few places in China that don't have electric power, but they're really not significant. And Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go. So, see you next time. Hope you join us then.
What a hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.